Hey everybody, and welcome to another Killing Floor 2 SDK guide. I've had a few people asking me if I would please do a video on how to set up a Dosh Hold volume. And I decided that sure, why not? That shouldn't take too long. It's not overly difficult once you understand how to do it. So I'm going to show you exactly how to make a very simple, basic square Dosh holdout zone. And then I'm going to do one that's slightly more advanced after that over here. So that you sort of get an idea of how to do something very simple and how to do it a bit more exotic. Now, in order to set up a Dosh Hold volume, what we want to do is we want to place down some boundary splines. Now, I'm just going to mention really quickly that there's many ways of doing things in level design, and one way of doing it might not necessarily be more wrong or right than the other. So what you're about to see here is how I personally do it. It's a way that functions quite well, but there may be other ways of doing exactly the same thing. So just bear that in mind. Right, let's get into it. I'm going to get up my content browser very first, and I'm going to set up some boundary splines. And to do that, I'm going to browse to actor classes. I'm going to go down here. We have this section here called Spline Actor. Open that up. And then select the Spline Loft Actor. I'll drag it into my map. I'm going to close my browser down. And I'm going to place this pretty much roughly where I want it to be situated in my environment. So I'm going to put this in the corner here. I want to have it down on the floor, down on the surface. And I'm pretty happy with this. Now I'm going to open up the properties of this thing. And we have a lot of different stuff that we can look at here. First of all, we need to set up a deform mesh and apply a material to that mesh. So I'm gonna get my content browser back up again, and I'm gonna browse down to packages, open that up. I'm gonna look for test packages, it's right here, mark this, and it's already loaded for me. You see this object perimeter 320 temp verts. This is a very convoluted name. If you don't see this, then you need to fully load your package. I'm just going to do it even though it is loaded. Might take a little while. Not a whole lot in there. There's really just this. So we select this and we tie this in right here. Deform mesh. That's now this thing. Now nothing really happened that we can see, but that's okay as long as it's there. Now we need a material. So we're going to click this green arrow, plus. And then we are going to browse to our, let's see, I forgot where it was. Right, we need to get to our material library, which is in packages, environment, material library, not material types. Oh, it's down here, sorry. Never mind me, it's not in environment, it's actually right here, material library. We open this up, and then this one, material library 3. Again, you may need to fully load this. Once it's fully loaded, you'll see a lot of different things, and the one we want to have is this one, PM Defend Objective Spline. You can use this one, but I don't recommend it when working with splines. This one's actually going to look a lot better. So we tie this one in here. And that's all we really need to do right now. Now then, what we're going to do, check this out. This is really cool. Once I have my spline selected, I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard. I'm going to drag. And something happened. It's barely visible. You see this little blue line we have down here? You can barely even see it. That's because we need to set up a few more things. I'm just going to mark these two, open up the properties. And I'm going to input the values that are used in the default official maps, because those seem to work really well. So this one is going to be 1.25, which increases the height of it. I'm going to set this one to 0, this one to 0, and this one to -1. And right now, we see something definitely happened here. Now we have this nice blue spline, but it's very wavy, it's sort of weaving into stuff. We can fix that by marking them, bringing up the properties, and changing the value of the X tangent. I'm just going to set this to 10. I like having it at 10. Gives me a very nice and straight line. Okay, that's actually our spline boundaries right there. Now, once we have this, I can drag this around as much as I want. I can even do it like this. I can shape it pretty much the way that I want it to be. So for this simple box area, I'm just going to leave it as a straight line. At about the halfway mark, that's about here. That's about there. I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and drag it again, creating a duplicate. Move that over here. I'm gonna do the same thing. Hold down the Alt key, drag it to about the middle. You can drag it all the way if you want, but the more you drag it, the more stretched out the material becomes. It's gonna look a little better if you don't drag them out too much. So I'll just add it there, and then add another one. Get it up there, and I'll do the same thing up here. Over there. Drag it right back down here. And connect it to the original down here. Once you have these in place, you can move them around as you see fit. See, I'm actually thinking they need to be a little closer to the wall over here, or the ledge. I'm just gonna grab them and drag. See, I can move them as much as I want. I think right about there is fine. See, now it actually overlaps with my original one. That's perfect. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, it could be better, but for this purpose, it's fine. Now, these are my boundaries. Now I need to create an actual volume. So I'm going to mark the floor. I'm going to hit the B button to unhide my builder brush. I'll click the square while having the floor marked to move the brush up here. I'm going to go into edit mode by clicking the Shift 2 button. Changing my snap to 8 because I like working in increments of 8. I'm going to drag it up to encompass my splines as closely as possible in order to make sure that it represents the actual visual feedback that the players get. I'll drag these out to the very edges. If my microphone is crackling at some point, I apologize. It's not doing too well, I guess, and I can't actually hear it myself because I'm not monitoring my sound, so just a forewarning that it might happen if it hasn't already. Anyway, now I have, this is fine. This is what I want my zone to be like. So, with my brush marked, I'm going to go into volumes, add a volume, and I'm going to browse and find KF map objective Dosh Hold. I'm going to click that. And then we're going to hide my brush, or you can just move it, whichever you want. And we now have our Dosh Hold volume right here. So we're going to open up the properties of this, and one of the first things I want to do is I want to go down to the brush, and I want to set a color. So I want to make sure that it's colored. Click that, and then choose a color. I like sort of a deep purple, something like this. Click OK. When I deselect it, you can see I now have this nice deep purple volume right here. We're going to select this again, and we are going to go down into the collision component right here. Open up the collision component. Browse down to this part here, RB collide with channels, and you want to make sure that flex asset is not ticked. You want to make sure that's disabled. This ensures that blood and guts that hit the volume go right through it instead of getting splashed against an invisible wall, which is going to look stupid. Now then, back to the top. There's a few things we want to set up in here. So first of all, I'm just going to use the settings that the default official maps use, because they seem to be working quite well. There's no reason to mess with it if it works, but you can tweak this in any way you want, really. First things, we want to set the Z penalty to 10. That's all we need for this part. I'm going to close that. And then in the KF map objective area defense, I'm going to set the Z thresholds to 4, 4, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine, and this one to 2. So that it reads 4, 4, 4, 3, 2, 2. Again, you can tweak this as you see fit. These are the official map values, so I'm just gonna go with those. Next, the use trail volume, use trail to volume. You want to make sure that's enabled so that when the volume becomes active in your map, we get a nice trader volume, or I guess follow defense volume, whatever, showing us where to go. Now, the next thing we have here is we have something called zone boundary splines. This is needed to tell our volume which splines it is associated with, so that whenever this volume gets activated, these blue splines gets activated along with it. In order to do that, we make sure that we have our volume selected, then we lock it, and now we just need to mark all of our zone boundary splines, our Spline Loft Actors, whatever. I don't know why they're called that, they just are. So I'm just selecting all of these by control, selecting them, and making sure that I don't shut down my, close down my properties windows. I've selected all of them, and you did notice I did have two that were completely overlapped, so you might have a little trouble selecting them, but with a little tweaking, it's possible. Now that all of these are marked, I'm just going to make sure that I'm in the zone boundary splines, hit this green arrow, and it's going to tie in all of these actors. These are now linked to my actual volume. I can close this down. One last thing is I now need to go into View, World Properties. I'm going to go down into, I think, yes, World Info, My Map Info, Objectives, and I'm gonna, this one, use random objectives, make sure that is enabled. And then, clicking my volume, my Dosh Hold volume, I'm gonna tie this into random wave objectives. Open that up, tie that in there. And then, in random objective waves to disable, I'm gonna add in and just type 1. And that's it. We have now created a Dosh Hold volume that whenever the game runs, it will be randomly selected. This volume will be randomly selected, and these splines will light up, showing us the path to the volume. And you can go in here and you can stay in it, and the properties that we set up in the volume will be applied to whatever numbers we tweaked in here, and so on and so forth. And that's really how easy it is. It's that simple. So basically this tutorial is technically over. I've shown you how to set up a simple Dosh Hold volume, and this is functional in your game. But I said I would create one that was a little more advanced, so I'm just going to go do that right here. I'm not going to be showing you anything new in what I'm going to do now, so if you are content with knowing how to do the basic thing, then thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it will serve you well for your future endeavors. If you want to see how to do a little more advanced setup, this is basically just fidelity, really. Stick around and check out while I make a volume for this. So what I want to do is I want to have this platform, this stair, this platform, this stair, and this platform be a Dosh Hold zone. So, same procedure as before. We're going to go into our content browser, go into actor classes. I'm going to pick up a Spline Loft Actor, drag it into my map, close that down. I'm going to get my first actor positioned where I want it to be. I'm going to change to a snap of 4. Align it with, that might be a bit too deeply into the floor. Actually, let me just check something. Can I go into transform and snap to floor? Yes, I can. That might be a better way of doing it, actually. Drag it to the very edge. Like that. Okay. So before I start dragging it, I'm just going to set up all my properties one by one. I want the X scale to be 1.25. My deform mesh, I'm going to open up my content browser. I'm going to browse to my test package, which is there it is, test package. Click this one, tie it into that, and the material. I'm going to add a material in the environment material library 3. I'm going to use this one, tie it in, I'm going to set the world direction to 0, 0, and -1. I'm going to make sure that my X tangent is set to something lower than 300. And I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to drag this to about the center here. Actually, I'm just going to make this a little simplified instead of, because the more zone boundaries, spline actors you add, the more stuff you have to click afterwards. So you can cut down a bit on your workload by, like I said, as long as you don't drag them out make them extremely long. Like if I take this and drag this out, the material starts looking very stretched out. It's purely a visual thing. It doesn't really matter much in terms of actual mechanics. So I want to drag this over here to my stairs. Now I'm gonna drag this like so. I'm just gonna make sure that I fit it to a roughly, I think, should I add it to the very edge here? I think I will. Yeah. I'm gonna add it there. And I'll drag another one up here. Another one over here. One over here. And drag this one up here. The very edge of the steps. You don't have to be this precise. I just like doing it because I'm kind of a perfectionist. I like doing things really nicely, very neatly, so to speak. Right. This one to the edge, to the other edge. And remember, you can always modify and rearrange these later. This is not something you have to do perfectly on the first try. If something is not right, you can just change it. That's why working with these Spline Loft Actors is so neat, because it's easy to basically redo stuff if you've done something wrong. Actually, right here, see, I think I want to take these. I want to drag them in a little bit. They're a bit too far out. And for this one, I'm just going to do a single outline. Pull this one down. It's a bit too deep. That's pretty good. Being a little bit sloppy here, but this is just to get the point across. Right, so that's the basic principle here. Those are my boundaries. Now I need to create my volume. I'm going to get my brush here. Once again, I go back to a snap of 8 because that's just the kind of snap size I like. And I'm going to encompass this entire platform here. There we go. Now, see, I want to make sure that this is one solid volume instead of creating multiple small ones, which I think you can actually fuse together later on, but I haven't messed around with it much. So I'm just going to do this the way that I do things. Let me just see here. How do I want to do this? You know what? I want to actually drag this in here. Remember, I'm working in a snap of 8. Which means I'm going to do 8 back this way. Yep. And I'm going to extrude this in a length of 8. And I'm going to make 2 segments. Apply. Go back to edit mode. And then drag this to the very edge here. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing right here. Extrude 2 segments of 8. Go back to edit. Gonna pull this one right about there, and I'm just gonna do this clever little thing here. I think I want to, no, I think this is actually pretty okay. Gonna drag it 8 units back again, extrude another 8x2, go back to edit. With this side selected, drag it up here. And for this one, I'm going to, maybe should have done 8 in that direction. You know what, it doesn't matter what I can do here, because I want to make sure that this is very perpendicular with my stairs. I'm just going to extrude this in a length of 1 by 1. Apply. And then I'm going to do one length of 8. Apply. Go back to edit. Drag this to the very edge. This is overlapping now by 1 unit. I could be really meticulous and then do this. Bring it in by 1 unit, like that. Again, I'm just being meticulous here. Go back to extrude. I want to make 2 segments of 8. Apply. Go back to edit. Drag this one to my stairs. Pull it up. Get it aligned with the floor. I think that's about... yeah, that's about there. 8 units back. I'm gonna extrude once again 2x8. Go back to edit. Pull this face out. And to the side. And there we go. That's a very neat, nice, solid volume that flows with the environment and encompasses my boundary splines pretty much perfectly. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, just good enough. I'm just gonna quickly hit my optimize button to get rid of any superfluous seams. And that's it. I'm gonna turn this into a KF map objective Dosh Hold. And as with before, I want to change the color. I don't remember exactly the color I use, so I'm just going to select my old one, copy this value, and tie it into this one. Make sure it's colored, type in that value, and voila. Once again, I want to make sure that flex asset is opted out of, because I don't want any flex collision on this volume. And we're going to set the same options as we did with the other one. We're going to make sure that the Z penalty is 10. That our Z threshold is 4, 4, and 2. There. The rest we don't need. Use trail to volume. Yes. Now we lock our volume and we select all of our splines. And it doesn't matter the order you select them in, you just need to make sure that you have them all selected. Looking good. I think that's all of them. It looks good to me. Down here, zone boundary splines. We hit the green arrow. They're all tied in. Excellent. Close down the properties. We select our volume. Go back into world properties. In the random wave objectives, we add another entry. We tie it in. And there we go. We're done. That's it. That's all there is to it. So you have a very simple square volume here. And you have a slightly more advanced one over here. Now, just one more thing I can show you really quickly is this, again, the spline actor tangent. The default value was 300. As you can see, what happens when you modify these numbers is the spline will start to really bend and shape and twist and twirl, which can be very useful if you have some geometry that you want to get around. Let's say, imagine if this corner, if this wall was actually a bend like this. Instead of creating 100 little singular splines to sort of fit with the bending wall, you can just deform and shape your splines to look the way you want. Like, for example, up here, I might have been able to do something with this one to make it look more rounded in the corner. It's probably too it's probably too small to notice. But once again, these are numbers that you can play around with in your own map, see what works for you, see what doesn't. I like just having them at 10, because at 10 allows me to make these really nice and sharp corners whenever you shape them in various different ways. That's all there is to it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Once again, thanks for sticking around, watching the whole thing. And you should be able to make your own Dosh Hold volumes now. If you know of a different way of doing this, like I said, there's many ways of doing things in level design. Some ways are easier than others, but if you achieve what you want, if the functionality is as you want it to be, then one way is neither more wrong nor right than the other, as long as you achieve the goal that you are out to get done. But that said, if you know a different way, if you have another way of creating your Dosh Hold volumes, I'd love to actually see how you do it, or at least hear about it. So feel free to add it in the comments. And until next time, I hope you have a nice time mapping and that you produce some really cool shit for us to play around with. Take care, goodbye, and see you in the next one.